The SS Carl D. Bradley was an American self-unloading Great Lakes freighter that sank in a Lake Michigan storm on November 18, 1958. Of the 35 crew members, 33 died in the sinking. Built in 1927 by the American Shipbuilding Company in Loren, Ohio, Carl D. Bradley was owned by the Michigan Limestone Division of U.S. Steel and operated by the Bradley Transportation Company. She retained the title of Queen of the Lakes for 22 years as the longest and largest freighter on the Great Lakes. Bradley Transportation Company's fleet of self-unloading ships was used to haul limestone from the Michigan Limestone Quarry in Rogers City, Michigan. By 7 feet, 2.1 meters, she was longer than the second largest ship on the Great Lakes, and her engine had almost twice the power of engines installed in most lake freighters. At 639 feet, 195 meters, she was the longest freighter and the largest self-unloader on the Great Lakes for 22 years. Later, the AA class of U.S. Steel-owned freighters was roughly the same size as Carl D. Bradley, but shorter in length by just inches. Carl D. Bradley retained the title Queen of the Lakes until the launch of the 678-foot, 207-meter-long SS Wilfred Skykes in 1949. Carl D. Bradley began as Hull 797 in 1923 at the American Shipbuilding Company in Loren, Ohio, where she was being launched on April 9, 1927. She was outfitted with her fore and aft housing in the ensuing months into her maiden voyage. Carl D. Bradley's registered port was New York City. However, her true base of operations was Rogers City, where Michigan Limestone was based. The Bradley transportation fleet was predominantly crewed by men from Rogers City. Many of the crew were friends, neighbors, or relatives. As the boats often departed and returned every few days, many of the crew made their homes and raised their families in Rogers City. During her career, Carl D. Bradley carried different grades of limestone from Lake Huron to the deep ports of Lakes Michigan and Erie, and occasionally Lake Superior. She set new records in the stone trade, carrying her largest cargo in 1929, which she loaded with 18,114 long tons, 20,288 short tons, 18,405 tons of limestone, a cargo that required 300 railroad cars to move. She was the first lake freighter to pass through the new MacArthur Lock at Sioux Locks in 1943. As the largest ship on the lakes, Carl D. Bradley was traditionally the first boat through the Straits of Mackinac, when the ice kept the smaller vessels from leaving port. She served as an icebreaker. Her forepeak was filled with concrete. She would then break the ice to Indiana, then go to the Loren shipyard for replacement of broken plates before starting her season. Carl D. Bradley sustained damage in a collision with the MV White Rose on the St. Clair River on April 3, 1957. She was in dry dock in Chicago for 7 days in May 1957 for major repairs to her hull. Carl D. Bradley had 2 groundings while proceeding out of Cedarville, Michigan, one in the spring of 1958 and the other in November of 1958, the latter of which required repairs. These groundings were not reported to the United States Coast Guard, which would later consider whether the groundings caused hull stresses that contributed to the Carl D. Bradley sinking. The United States Coast Guard noted that although Bradley Transportation received an award for $2,228,775 for an injury-free man-hours from April 24, 1955 to December 31, 1957, while operating Carl D. Bradley. The company's focus was industrial safety rather than material safety of the vessel. Since the company's founding in 1912, it had never lost a ship until the loss of the Carl D. Bradley. Although the Carl D. Bradley was normally one of the busiest ships in the Bradley fleet, she was laid up from July 1 to October 1, 1958, due to a turndown in the steel industry. She only made 43 round trips in the 1958 shipping season. Carl D. Bradley was scheduled for repairs in Wisconsin when she was laid up over the winter. Her owner, Bradley Transportation, planned an $800,000 replacement of her rusting cargo hold and bulkheads. A common joke among her crew was that she was being held together by her rust. Sailors reported that they picked up sheared-off rivets by the bucketful following storms due to the Carl D. Bradley's extensive twisting and bending in heavy weather. The United States Coast Guard conducted an annual inspection of the Carl D. Bradley on April 17, 1958, and found her seaworthy. On October 30, 1958, the United States Coast Guard found no problems during an annual safety inspection of the Carl D. Bradley that included a fire and boat drill. The Carl D. Bradley met its fate on November 18, 1958, while en route to Rogers City. The previous day, she had completed what was supposed to be her last voyage of the 1958 season, which she completed with delivery of a cargo of crushed stone at Gary, Indiana. After leaving Gary, Carl D. Bradley set course for Wisconsin, where she was due to spend her winter layup in dry dock, and was to have a new cargo hold fitted. She departed Gary empty on her final voyage on November 17th at 10 p.m., with 9,000 U.S. gallons in her ballast tanks for stability. However, when Carl D. Bradley was only a few hours from Wisconsin, she received an order from U.S. Steel to return to the harbor, as they had scheduled her to deliver another load of stone at the last minute. The ships were running parallel with Carl D. Bradley when she passed Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at 4 a.m. on November 18th. She reduced her speed sometime before 4 p.m. to 14 to 15 miles per hour. By 4 p.m., she was past Poverty Island. Winds were storm force from the southwest at 60 to 65 miles per hour. Carl D. Bradley was riding comfortably. At 5:35 p.m., the ship was about 12 miles southwest of Gull Island. At this moment, a loud thud was heard, followed by a vibration. The first mate turned aft and saw the stern of the vessel sagging. The captain slammed the engine telegraph to stop engines and started the alarm to abandon ship. As the ship broke in two, he shouted at the crew on deck to run and don their life jackets. The first mate managed to radio transmissions of Mayday and get their position before their power lines aboard the ship were severed. The crew on the German cargo vessel Christine Sartori witnessed the sinking through their binoculars. They saw lights go out on the forepart of the ship while the aft end of the ship remained lit. Then they saw the lights on the aft end go out so that the silhouette of the ship remained barely visible. A short time later, they heard an explosion and saw a red, yellow, and white column of flame and remnants shoot up in the air. They concluded that the Bradley had exploded. After witnessing the explosion, Christine Sartori immediately altered course for the Carl D. Bradley's location. However, the wind and waves were so fierce that it took her 1.5 hours to traverse the 4 miles that separated the vessels. The Plum Island Life-Saving Station deployed a 36-foot, both within minutes of the sinking. The crew was unable to steer or make any headway in the storm and was forced to seek shelter on nearby Washington Island. The United States cutter Sundew went out from Charlevoix, Michigan, into the open lake in the pouring seas of an unrelenting gale. She arrived at the search area at 10:40 p.m. on November 19th, 5 hours after the Carl D. Bradley sank. Coast Guard Station Charlevoix also launched a 36-foot motor lifeboat in an attempt to reach the Carl D. Bradley, but this was ordered back after being mercilessly tossed around on Lake Michigan. The United States Coast Guard cutter Hollyhock from Surgeon Bay, Wisconsin, arrived on the search scene at 1:30 a.m. on November 19th after a 7-hour trip that made her skipper describe as a visit to hell. At 8:37 a.m. on November 19th, Sundew located Carl D. Bradley's forward life raft 15 hours after the sinking, and 17 miles from the disaster site. 2 survivors were on the raft: First Mate Elmer H. Fleming and Deck Watchman Frank L. Mays. Another crew member from the Carl D. Bradley, Deckhand Watchman Gary Salisk, was also found alive, but died not long after being rescued. During the day, Sandu and other vessels recovered 17 more bodies, all wearing life jackets. The bodies were brought to Charlevoix City Hall for family identification. More life jackets were found laced up, indicating that they may have slipped off when they were being worn. In all of the 35 crewmen, 33 lost their lives. The bodies of the 15 men now recovered remain missing to this day.